This is a fight over a piece of land. It's as simple as that. Pakistan wants Kashmir, India wants Kashmir. It's a piece of real estate, and it should be seen as that. It should also be seen as an unwinnable war because neither India nor Pakistan have the ability to seize it from the other.
Hi, I'm Ailia Zehra, and this is a special Dissent Today broadcast where we will be discussing an issue related to the recent India Pakistan conflict. And joining me today is Pervez Hoodbhoy, who is one of Pakistan's leading academics. And there's a lot to unpack what happened in the past few weeks in Pakistan ever since this conflict began, the rhetoric that emerged from Pakistan. Some of the things are very interesting, but there are things that are concerning, of course. So, the rhetoric that emerged from Pakistan right after this operation began, Pakistan launched its operation against India in response to Indian airstrikes. We saw that that was described in terms of religious terminologies were used, and a lot of concepts like jihad were invoked many times, not just by anchors and social media users, but also during military briefings. Jihad, which means fight again between Muslims and non-Muslims, is still being used to describe the outcome of this war. And there's a lot of celebration going on. You must have seen how people are overjoyed by the way Pakistan was able to shoot down, Indian jets. That is being seen as a victory. So, I mean, it does make sense that Pakistanis want to celebrate this. This is a nation that has gone through so much turmoil, so much unrest in recent years. So it's understandable that they want to celebrate what they see as a victory over a hostile neighboring country. But at the same time, it is important to not get carried away. And so, especially those who identify as progressive, as liberals, haven't really challenged this rhetoric, this Islamic rhetoric that we have seen during and after this conflict with India. So, you, Hubboy Saab, have been warning us for decades that this rhetoric, this Islamic touch, as some people call it, is dangerous, and that it has dangerous consequences for society. It radicalizes young people. So I'm curious to know your thoughts about the way the Pakistan's response to India and the conflict itself has been framed in the Pakistani mainstream.
Well, of course, the conflict goes back decades, but most immediately after just before the massacre in Pahalgam of 26 Hindu tourists, Chief of Army Staff of the Pakistan Army had reiterated the two-nation theory, which in a nutshell says that Hindus and Muslims cannot live together, and the separation of Pakistan from India was therefore inevitable, that India, being Hindu, will always be an enemy of Pakistan. Now, it was perhaps coincidental and perhaps not that the massacre happened shortly after that. I personally believe that there was no connection between Chief of Army Staff's speech and the incident, but who knows? In any case, the fact that India responded provocatively and so dangerously, so as to nearly precipitate a nuclear war, led to Pakistan reacting to Indian airstrikes, as you said, and then shooting down a number of the top Indian jets, the Rafales. This whole thing was framed, as you said, in Islamic rhetoric, and the consequences of that have been to rally support, at least in the short term, and to get General Asim Munir out of some really big difficulties that he was having. So, in particular, Balochistan, which has been unhappy about being ruled by Punjab and which actually never sought to be a part of Pakistan in 1947, but was railroaded into it. There has been an insurgency over there for as long as Pakistan has existed. Now, the current rhetoric is that is fitna al-Balochistan. And fitna is a very Islamic term. It refers to a fight from within, and this was Fitna al Hindustan. Sorry, I didn't mean Balochistan. Fitna al Hindustan. This is an internal fight which has been provoked by Hindustan, by India, and therefore all the blame for all that is happening in Balochistan is being put upon India. So that's one consequence. But the other consequence, and this precedes Pahalgam, was that what is happening in the frontier province or the KPK province is termed as fitna al-Kharij. And that too is an Islamic term for an internal discord coming from extremists. Now, the fact is that in the case of Balochistan, it's an unequal distribution of resources that has led to the Baloch being very upset with rule by Punjab. And in the case of KPK, the Pathans have been very upset about the fact that the Pakistan army nurtured Islamic extremists who initially were very useful to the army, but later on they proved to be not just an embarrassment but a positive danger. And in fact, it is they who are attacking the Pakistan army day in and day out. So to cover all that up, Pakistan army now terms it as an Indian conspiracy. It's very unfortunate, I would say, that Islam has been invoked for purely political purposes here. It is being used to cover up the injustices that have been inflicted upon the rest of Pakistan by Pakistan's ruling class. And it leads to some very interesting contradictions. So, for example, the Afghans who fled the Taliban and are in Pakistan are being thrown out by the Pakistan military, by the Pakistan establishment, which includes both the military and the political class, when in fact, according to the two-nation theory, they are properly a part of Pakistan. Two-nation theory, which General Asim Munir invoked prior to the Pahalgam attack was, anyone who's a Muslim is a Pakistani. That was the original two-nation theory. But hey, why are you then throwing out the poor Afghan refugees who don't want to go back because they will be suppressed? Their kids won't, their girl children won't be able to go to school. Where does Islam go in this case? If the two-nation theory actually holds, if your Islamic rhetoric is based upon fact, upon true Islam, then the Afghan refugees should be welcome to Pakistan and allowed to stay and become part of Pakistan. So this is one of the many contradictions.
Right. We'll come to that, these double standards in a moment. But before that, I'm curious to know what you think about how progressive quarters in Pakistan responded to this rhetoric that came out after this conflict with India. The name of the operation itself was, taken from a Quranic verse. And so I remember that, a decade or so ago, there was still some pushback from Pakistan liberal and secular quarters when it came to such use of Islamic terminologies. When the military operation against Taliban was first launched in Zarb-e-Azab in 2014, I remember that even though there was a sort of consensus that Taliban have to be defeated and the military operation was being supported, but still there were people who were questioning, there was still some scrutiny from Pakistan's liberal and secular quarters. They were not so willing to get behind the military, right? But that pushback is missing right now, I think. So what do you have to say about the way progressive and secular, I think some of them have just joined in the celebrations, victory celebrations, and they're okay with this Islamic rhetoric that's coming out, and no one is there to challenge it. No one is asking that if you're invoking Islam, jihad to describe what happened, then you're alienating the religious minorities who also live in this country, who also may want to become a part of these celebrations, right? But they cannot if you just keep framing it as a Muslim versus non-Muslim conflict. So what do you have to say about the way progressive and liberal quarters in Pakistan responded to this conflict between India and Pakistan?
Well, you're quite right that there was little pushback from those who opposed the army and opposed the kind of Islamic rhetoric that has made Pakistan a religious hell for minorities. But we have to understand that this is in great part a reaction to the fact that India has also become a very minority intolerant culture under Prime Minister Modi, who has specifically targeted Muslims in India and reduced them to the level of second-grade citizens. So this deviates enormously from India's position as a secular democracy, and in that process, it has become closer to Pakistan. So the liberal secular class in Pakistan, I must say to my disappointment, has primarily pointed to India's intolerance as a kind of justification for the um, the donning of Islamic robes in Pakistan. And to my mind, this actually is a betrayal of a bigger cause. That bigger cause should be Pakistan needs to be a country which gives equal opportunity and equal place to all its citizens, irrespective of their religion, and to couch this war in religious terms is absolutely intolerable. It is not. This is a fight over a piece of land. It's as simple as that. Pakistan wants Kashmir. India wants Kashmir. It's a piece of real estate, and it should be seen as that. It should also be seen as an unwinnable war because neither India nor Pakistan have the ability to seize it from the other. We live in the nuclear age when both countries have sufficient uh, nuclear power to eliminate the other. And so instead of cheering on what are illusory victories, I think we need to come to our senses. And when I say we, I mean not just the people in Pakistan, but also in India, who have been cheerleading their strike into Pakistan, which I must say um, is something that simply cannot be justified on either moral or legal or rational grounds. Uh, After all, that attack on Hindu tourists could very well have been done by Kashmiri fanatics. Of course, there is a possibility that it could have been, that it was in the know of the Pakistani authorities, but I think that's a distant possibility. And in any case, it is not something that India has provided ironclad proof of. In fact, what they did was mass punishment, arresting 2,000 Kashmiris, bulldozing houses, and as yet, those 5 men who committed that atrocity are at large. Totally disproportionate reaction. And today
Right.
we are where we are.
Right. So, as you said, Pakistani military has received widespread support after this, after their response to India, and there have been rallies in support of the armed forces in the country. So, how do you, when there's a literal war between, your countries at war with another country, then of course, people tend to argue that you need to get behind the military, right? Should progressive quarters strike a balance between getting behind the military's war efforts, their response to a hostile neighboring country's aggression, and also sort of holding them accountable? As you said, in Balochistan and other parts of the country, there have been rights violation in which the military has been accused of having a role.
Well, I think the best way to do this is understand it through the root of social psychology. When you have human beings, or actually even apes, there are two kinds of aggression that can exist. One is intra group, and the other is inter group. So one group can be, each group exists for obvious reasons, that it is better for humans to work together in groups, or or apes to work together in groups. But you can have fighting within the group and fighting another group. So here it's one group versus the other, not a fight within that has dominated. It is always easier for the leaders of a group to point to the other group and say that they are the attackers. We have to defend ourselves from them. And so, in this case, the majority of people in India and the majority of people in Pakistan have stood behind their leaders temporarily. I say very temporarily, because they feel threatened by an external enemy. However, the internal contradictions are sure to surface. I, in fact, they're already surfacing. In fact, in Pakistan, the you see that the TTP, the Pakistani Taliban, are attacking Pakistani army soldiers as if the incident in Pahalgam had not occurred. The rate is almost the same. And in Balochistan, I'm sure that the same is happening, although news from that is very sparse to come by. And so the reprieve that the Pakistani military has got because of India's attack is going to be very temporary. There are going to be problems. In fact, there was this problem before India attacked of the division of waters between Punjab and Sindh. And because the Indians attacked, the the fight was temporarily forgotten, but it's coming up again. And so I'd say that the progressives in Pakistan who sided with the military will shortly be reassessing their support.
Okay, so you have a very optimistic view that this is not permanent. This sort of solidarity and legitimacy that the Pakistani military seems to have received following this conflict will soon fade away, and this will basically they will come back to questioning the military. You're saying?
Well, look. This is not an optimistic view. This is exactly what has happened time and time again. We saw that war fever could be whipped up in the 1965 war, and we saw how fast that faded when General Ayub Khan, who had uh, who had instigated that war by sending Pakistani army troops into Kashmir, disguised, was soon overthrown. We saw that, well, forget 1971, we saw that after General Musharraf had provoked the Kargil invasion, he didn't last too long after that. So it's that that fervor, that war fervor, fever, you could also say, fades. People then say, hey, why is the military getting such a lion's share of resources in Pakistan? Why is it dominating business, airlines, banks, insurance, huge housing schemes? What's this got to do with fighting a war with India? And so I think they're going to come back to their senses, even those liberal, secular, progressive Pakistanis who have temporarily succumbed to war fever. They're
Okay.
going to get, uh,
So you
they'll,
Yeah, you mentioned Balochistan earlier. So, what happens in Balochistan is often a lot of even the activism that's going on there, human rights defenders who are taking to the streets, people like Maharang Baloch, who are then arrested for protesting against what they see as increasing state oppression. They are accused of treason by Pakistan's establishment. So do you think that this narrative, this whole practice of using treason allegations, weaponizing treason allegations against activists from smaller provinces from the peripheries, including Balochistan, will this also increase following this legitimacy that the Pakistan military has? Because now these days you cannot question anything, and if you point out what's happening in Balochistan, what the activists are saying, you risk being accused of sort of basically supporting India, right?
well, let's come to Balochistan in a minute, but look at what happened to the Pakhtun Tahaffuz Mahaz, that is the movement for safeguarding Pakhtun rights. Now, this was a purely peaceful movement which had as its demand simply that landmines be removed, that Pakistan not that they not be checked at checkposts every few yards, basically asking to be treated as decent citizens of Pakistan. Now, these were not Baloch, these were Pathans, Pakhtuns, and they were violently suppressed by the Pakistani military. This is a travesty. This is a misuse, a blatant misuse of religion, of imposing the army's views upon the part of the population which has been utterly exploited and which has suffered as a consequence of Pakistan's support for the Taliban over the decades. Now, come to Balochistan. It's simply a question of resources over there. The Baloch say, and they have been saying this for decades, that we have been exploited. The vast amount of gas and minerals that come from Balochistan have been appropriated by the center. The center is where, of course, the army draws all its strength from. And now, to say that this is because India is exploiting this, well, of course, now let's, of course, not deny that India has tried, it is trying, and will try continuously to destabilize Pakistan because it sees that as Pakistan's Achilles heel. It's a weak spot, and with the two countries engaged in a zero sum game, it sees opportunity over there. Should we buy it? No, we should step back. We, by we, I mean those who seek to understand Pakistan and want social justice for its people, we should step back and say that unless Pakistan becomes a more equal country, unless the Baloch and the Pakhtuns and the Gilgit Baltistanis are given due respect and due control over their resources, we're not going to get peace. Whether or not there is an India, wipe India off the face of the earth, and these movements will still continue to exist because there is a feeling amongst those people there that they have been exploited, and it's absolutely true. I went to Balochistan just a while ago, and what I saw was a country under occupation. You can see these soldiers, and these soldiers don't come from Balochistan; they come from outside, mostly from Punjab and some from KPK. You see them stopping local people, asking, "Why are you here?" And the Baloch say, "Hang on, you've come from outside. Why are you asking us why we are here?" It's got
Yeah.
nothing to do with India, although India will take every opportunity to now hit out at Pakistan.
Right. So, do you think that Pakistan's mainstream civil society, mainstream media, they have done what needs to be done when it comes to, shedding light on what is these injustices that you've just mentioned that are happening in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa for a while now?
Oh, by no means. The media in Pakistan has been so utterly compromised that even liberal newspapers, I won't name them, English mainstream newspapers, which occasionally used to raise the issue of the Baloch, the Gilgit Baltistanis, the Pakhtuns, they have gone silent. But as I say, they won't be silent for too long because unless, of course, there's another war, then they'll continue to do what they're doing now, which is putting their support behind the powers that be.
Okay.
And it's, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're running out of time. My last question would be, what do you think should be Pakistan's progressive people's response to the extremism issue. The rise of TLP is an issue that is, it's concerning. They have become more powerful now, the TLP, and they hold so much influence. Even young people who have nothing to do with terrorism are being inspired by their ideology, and killing people in the name of blasphemy. Mob violence is on the rise. So what should the state's response, how should this challenge be dealt with, and also what should progressive quarters do in order to provide a counter narrative to the narrative that the TLP and other extremist groups have created?
Well, just like the TTP has been declared a terrorist organization, so should the TLP be declared one. It is, in fact, a source of terror to the people of this country. It has attacked not just the religious minorities, but anyone who they feel is an impediment in their grab to power. They have organized the blasphemy business as a business and are making huge amounts of money from that. In every sense of the word, they are a terrorist organization and should be immediately declared as such.
Hoodbhoy Saab, thanks so much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.